Right. Thank you very much. And thanks for your stamina. The view here in the spotlight is really not showing me the audience, so I hope there's still somebody around. I would like to quickly elaborate a little bit on smart grid cybersecurity for the future. These lights might go off, and it should not be for a cyber attack. At the European level, we're having a well-elaborated approach for a number of years, but we have done this with the stakeholder community, and I would like to tell about this approach now and about the next steps. The overarching principle of the new European Commission under Ms. Ursula von der Leyen as President-elect will be the European Green Deal. This is the document of the political guidelines that Ms. von der Leyen has issued, and she has found the target of reducing greenhouse gas emissions by 50% by 2030. And during her campaign, she put 55%. So that pressure will be on. Europe shall be a climate-neutral continent in 2050. And also for Poland, that will be a challenge because member states have to contribute, and coal might not be the #1 energy source anymore in the future. The Green Deal also has implications on the power grid, as we know it traditionally like this. It's a very sketchy makeup here, and it will bring us some challenges for the future. The challenges are all digital because we will run into a digital future where the Green Deal will force us to balance better. And we'll have challenges like inter alia, much more renewable energy, and it will not be so centric anymore. A decentralized power generation and also a new term of decentralized storage. We've been thinking and talking about storing energy in electrical batteries of cars that we might have in the millions one day in Europe. We have talked about a word that is not really English, which is a prosumer. This is somebody who's producing and consuming electrical power from photovoltaics on the rooftop and consuming locally or feeding back into the grid. Therefore, we will need digitalization because we will have a completely different load balancing and a fine granularity in doing what we will have to do to meet the climate objectives. We will also see a large number of smart devices connected to the grid. They're not really part of the grid, but they might have an essential effect on the grid. This is all a thinking that is already around, but with the European approach of the Green Deal and climate neutrality, we will have to see a lot more. And reducing greenhouse gas emissions to by 50% and then by 55% will strengthen the effort that we have to do. So the old grid, as we sketch it here, will not do the trick. We will have to do more, and the future grid will therefore have to be way more intelligent. How smart do we have to become? The future grid actually will not be able to be completely different because the infrastructure is laid out. So we'll have to add to the infrastructure. And what is it that we will have to add? Brains, intelligence. So we will add information technology. We will add IT. IT is depicted here as smart home, not really part of the grid, but also data centers, data analytics, big data, and of course control centers. So in the future grid, we will find smart IT everywhere, in all components of the grid, communicating to each other, balancing each other, and associated and connected to the grid outside the controls of the grid operators. So we will have the connected IT, and it will be omnipresent. in this point, not only the connected information technology will be omnipresent, but also the cyber security risks. Because we are increasing the area that can be attacked. And we will have to do this rapidly. And we will have to do it everywhere. So there will be a different risk situation. If I look into what we have as news of January 2017, it's not that new, but it was a second incident here. Ukraine power cut was a cyber attack, BBC. Talking about December 2016 and not about the bigger attack in 2015. Then the year after, US accuses Russia of cyber attack. The year thereafter, this year, US ramps up attack on Russia power grid. I mean, we will see some more of this. And you don't need to read the Blackout book by the, I think, Dutch author Mark Ellsberg that has become very popular to imagine what a general power blackout might mean. Reading that the effects are already visible and that there are efforts at nation-state level to attack the power grids, also for geostrategic purposes, we better ramp up our defenses. So question to you, if we want to cyber protect the energy grid, the power grid, do we need to have anything specific or can we do as we do everywhere else? And the European Commission with the stakeholder community has worked on this. You can think about it for a second. And the answer is yes, there are some specificities in the power grid that are not in telecommunications, not in the internet, not in other environment. We have real-time requirements in the power grid, so literally some components in the power grid don't have time for cybersecurity. A circuit breaker needs to interrupt immediately and cannot run a challenge response, a check of a digital signature, and a verification and authentication of a command. That would be too late. It needs to act. We have also cascading effects that we do not have in this way in other infrastructures that are more of a meshed architecture. Power blackouts we have seen, and I've been talking about it several times also, first in the United States, then in Sweden, and then the Germans wanted to have a planned shutdown of a high voltage line over a river when a cruise ship had to be passed by. And the planned German shutdown produced a blackout that went over Germany, through France, touching Italy, touching Switzerland, and going into also northern Africa. You wouldn't believe it. It was a planned shutdown by the Germans. How much more accurate could you be? And still it happened. I don't want to see these things as consequences of a cyber attack. So the technology mix that we're having in the grid is also binding us because we have legacy technology that we can't abandon. And everybody is stepping 2 feet into the digital world in the future. The finance sector has gone there. Telecommunications is all digital in the meantime, but the electricity sector, the power grid, will always have 1 foot anchored in the legacy technologies and the other foot is stretching out into digital. So it's getting more and more complicated and the split is getting bigger. And this is creating additional risks. Therefore, the European Commission has issued just this year, and this is very timely, 5th anniversary of this conference, I'm happy to speak here, recommendations on cybersecurity in the energy sector. They're addressing, as typically at the European level, the member states, but indirectly also the operators and partly the technology suppliers are addressed. The recommendations will be monitored. So every year we will have the Network and Information Security Coordination Group of member states representatives, and we will see how far member states can report progress on the specificities for energy that I've mentioned. And we will review also this process. The first preparation meeting will be later this year, and in April 2020 we'll have a formal stopover. But the recommendations are not always, as they are, a problem description, but they're always giving some, this time they're giving also some ideas on how to counteract. Typically, the Commission says, we have a problem here, member states, please pay attention. This time we have given some hints because not everybody is skilled on cybersecurity, and it's an expert topic, and these recommendations and the ideas how to act, you don't have to read all this, it's on the slides and later, can be deployed by smaller companies, distribution system operators, by those companies who might not really have the full competence in-house. So the idea is not copy over what works for finance or for telecommunications, for the internet. Know about the specificities of your sector. If you're a company, think about cascading effects, think about those who could come in and that you would have to deal with, and think about those cascading effects that you could cause yourself to others that you are connected to. If anybody should want to have more info about the policy context, about the energy specificities that I've been talking about international standards, about Commission fora at the European level, or about the research services of the European Commission is doing, or about expert and stakeholder groups, there is a staff working document issued at the same point in time, April this year. And if you just Google SWD 2019-1240, you will find this document giving you the full background. I can't do this here in 15 minutes. The next steps of the European Commission are, of course, the follow-up on the recommendation as explained. And this will be a continued effort with the member states. This is not something where a recommendation kills the problem. The second step will be looking into the possibility to anchor also the sector specifics of cybersecurity into national risk assessments and national cybersecurity plans. Then we will have a big flagship effort under the Clean Energy for All Europeans package that was adopted as part of the Energy Union at European level. So the member states have confirmed already that there will be a network code on cybersecurity all across Europe as a regulation in 2 to 3 years' time, where then the baseline security in the power networks in the grid will be stabilized over a common regulation worked out by experts groups of associations and adopted by the European Commission formally. Until then, we would like to also look into other frameworks and other tools that we're having at European level. So we will look into Cybersecurity Certification. This is something where the Cybersecurity Act of last year has already prepared the grounds, and we have a framework now where we can do cybersecurity certification of products, of processes, and of services all across Europe. We have deployed this in a first working group to the target of cloud computing. Now the question is, would certification help for the energy sector? And this is not something that can be answered very easily. Therefore, we would like to join the stakeholder community together, have hearings with industry associations, with stakeholder associations, and the hearings will still be in November and December this year. We will look into how much benefit we could get from certification of either processes or products or services in the energy sector, and how we could really produce a more stable, a safer, a cyber-resilient energy sector by certification at the European level. We also will check if there is a benefit at all, and this is why I wanted to draw your attention to this. If you have an idea about this, please feed this into your national industry associations, and they will take it on for the European discussion that we will have later this year. I would like to conclude my 15 minutes here with the appeal that we should exchange more information, put the heads together and collaborate, because we're all connected, and that will be stronger connected tomorrow, and exchange what we want to exchange and what we can exchange, because only collaboration will keep us successful in the continued effort on cybersecurity. We will not have any European legislation that solves the problem. The problem will be with us as long as we have information technology, and that might be forever. Thank you very much.